Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. I know when it comes to hope, or it doesn't really sound like it makes sense when we talk about all the tragic issues when it comes to substance use and mental health. But without uncertainty, unfortunately, there cannot be hope. They kind of exist together. And yes, it can be messy. Today, I have a good friend returning to share her insight, her experience regarding holding on to hope as we pay tribute to both Recovery Month and Suicide Prevention Week. Thank you, Morgan, for coming on and agreeing to share your insight.
Of course. Thank you so much, Robert. It's always a pleasure to come on Revive Ministries Podcast. I really enjoy collaborating with you, and I just love all the work that you're doing in our community. And it's always a privilege and a pleasure. So thank you.
It is humbling to kind of hear all these stories, and also understanding that it's not, the hard part of it is not actually at the same time gives us that much hope, and I want to share with those who are listening a disclaimer. If you are in crisis, I encourage you to seek appropriate professional help immediately. The crisis hotline in the United States is 1-800-273-8255. But wherever you are in the world, those who are listening outside, I do encourage you to find what resources are there, because support can come in very different ways. Again, I always start off with my podcast with a quote, because I know people have said it better than I have. And Napoleon Bonaparte says it this way, and I want to hear your insight. It says, courage isn't having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have the strength. What comes to mind when you hear that? Courage isn't having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have the strength.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to be brave and have courage when you know the outcome of something, and when it's easy. And I know from my own recovery experience, there were a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty, and I wasn't really ready to get help until I had absolutely zero idea how to get out of the hole that I had put myself in. And for me, as far as leaning on other people and just having the courage to ask for help, I think is key. And so it just really takes me back to that place of uncertainty and just not knowing. And I think that that's the most beautiful place a person can be in whenever it comes to early recovery, or even just contemplating recovery, is just not knowing. And in those moments, reaching out to people who do know and allowing them to carry you through the process.
There's something very honest about that, just not knowing. A lot of us try to lie to ourselves how much we know, or how much, if I do this. And a lot of times we get ourselves even more discouraged if it doesn't pan out. When I look at this quote, I think of myself strength and how we view it. It has shown me personally what I find valuable. In recovery, like you said, this uncertainty can be overwhelming at times. And you kind of shared this already, but I kind of want to ask, give an opportunity. What has helped you move past some of the uncertainty? We're still in it. It's just how do you look at it differently when you look at uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that uncertainty still places me in a position of fear at times. And there's been a lot of uncertainty over the last year and a half, 2 years now, and just kind of in the world around us. And for me, what has helped me move past that is really connecting, getting grounded and connecting. I do a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, a lot of breath work. Mm-hmm. And when I take the moment to pause and truly connect with what's valuable and important to me in life, I'm capable of being okay with the uncertainty.
I was reading for myself, and then someone else actually kind of said the same thing when it comes to substance use, in Recovery Month. Right? And the thing was, the opposite of what addiction, they say, is connection. Like not sobriety. It is connectiveness, because a lot of times we ask the wrong questions.
Yeah.
Why do you do this? You shouldn't do this. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, that's the question we may have to ask. And I found that really, for me, because substance use could look very different from someone who watching someone versus
Yes.
someone experiencing it. And we talked about uncertainty, and I just kind of drew up this quote, and I was gonna not use this so soon. I was actually it's from Jeff Foster, and I love how it it's kind of haunting. It says, leave everything undefined, including yourself. Befriend uncertainty, fall in love with mystery, kneel at the altar of not knowing, give your questions time to breathe, and the answers will find you. For me, it's hard for us to slow down, and for us to say, give our questions time to breathe. I don't have time. I have to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It always feels so urgent.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know, like growing up, I kind of felt like that kind of, as simple, a lot of people struggle with nicotine, and as we kind of overlook it. But for me, when I was in the military, I used to chew tobacco all the time because I had to stay awake. I just remember it made me feel sharp at the time, but when I got out, I would say, well, I want to stay the same sharpness. So I justified in my mind, I'm not working 13, 14 hours anymore.
Yeah.
But somehow I could lie to myself that because of this, I'm going to be more useful, yet more valuable because I'm more busy. And you don't allow the room to reflect, is the point. So I just wanted to share that kind of thread. And
I really like that a lot. I mean, it brings up a lot for me, the idea of control. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything in my life that has been proven that I cannot control, that is my substance use. And even dealing with like mental health and depression, like sometimes it's out of the realm of my control. Like all I can do is just try to take actions and reach out for help. And living a life, in active addiction, I was constantly in a position of reacting to the world around me. And for me today, it's so important to once again bring it back to a place of being centered, grounded, and connected, and just allowing things to unfold. Like I think that if I'm truly in a position of understanding, and this is for me, and I don't know how you feel about this, Robert, but if I'm truly in a position that God is in control, then I have absolutely nothing to fear. And it took me a lot of years to get to that place. And so that's truly how I survive uncertainty in most times, because I have to remember that I'm not in control. And
I do appreciate, I never deter people's personal, because recovery is different for everyone. What works is different, and I don't proselytize because I know how me being a leader in the church, even me being a leader in the church, I know how much damage church per se can do to people. I know that most people can hide the best in church from God. Okay. Yes. And that's kind of funny to say it that way, but we know what to say. We know all the talking points. But I do encourage, that when you talk about uncertainty, and I said before in the monologue, you can't have hope without uncertainty existing.
Very true.
And with that regard, with my faith, and those who are listening, Revive Ministries' whole mission is to kind of inspire us asking and continue asking the question, why do we do what we do, and kind of continue to dialogue in a safe place. But in regards to my own personal journey in my faith, I would say the one I just look at it because I went to a math, STEM university, that's very technical university. So math was the key. So Albert Einstein, I read a lot of his stuff. And one of the things was the one constant in life is change. All right. So when I kind of go through the thought process at the same time, everything changes, even relationships. There's so many variables that are mind-blowing. But when it comes to my faith in God and the concept of God, he stays the same. And that for myself in the very beginning is very, comforting, because
Mhm.
everything changes. Even good change is stressful. You know what I mean? It's just like so many things. So I feel that, whatever faith you're in, whatever you believe, whatever your why is, I do encourage you to um, explore it a little bit deeper. So, in regards to, we talked about substance use, and I also have to, mention this month is also Suicide Prevention Week, World Suicide Day, and all that. And I just wanted to share this quote and get your thoughts. If you want to show me that you really love me, don't say that you would die for me. Instead, stay alive for me. And to stay. And when I think of this in the context that helps me, and I want to hear your thoughts, Morgan, it's more about defining things in our lives. The context doesn't fit, and I feel this quote speaks a lot to me. So, what when you hear this quote, what does it say to you, Morgan?
Well, I think it really reminds me of my why today. I deal with a lot of non-active suicidal ideation, and like that question of like, what's the point, will come up occasionally through my mind. And I am a survivor of 9 suicide attempts, and I must say that like every day that I take action to improve my life and to continue moving, like I'm demonstrating to the rest of my family and friends that I love them and I care about them, because I know that they love and care and support me, and have supported me through the darkest times. And the more that I can continue to grow and increase my ability to want to live, and that's that to them gives them comfort, and also it's in a way for me, it's making an amends to my family and my friends, when I'm constantly striving to do my best and be my best. And I may fall short. I do fall short, certain days, but just the fact that I'm trying, and I'm willing, to them is really demonstrating how much I love them, and in turn love myself today.
Yeah, and family was, for me, a big part of why I'm still here today. Family's not perfect and they're messy at times, but for me, I remember, I've attempted a few times, and I just remember just being very lucky. Not everyone makes it, and that's why we talk about these things. But at the same time, I just remember when I was, after those few suicide attempts and after losing people that I know, I just thought of sometimes it's just a split second of my family, and what would that look like? So the pain is real, and I do not minimize that everyone's situation is different. This quote is not to say you should stay alive. No, it is understanding that we need to define things. Sometimes it seems so dark. And as a peer and one who lost friends close to me in suicide, and also a veteran who understands that just dying for someone can be taken out of context. Life is much more complicated than that. Saying choosing life is courageous. It is courageous, and I'm not minimizing those in extreme pain right now who are struggling. But I want to share briefly again the U.S. That in the U.S. the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. But suicide is something hard to talk about, but needs to be talked about. And for me, everyone's like recovery is different. How we process these things are different. But I do encourage, just that split second. I remember this family. For me, being my mom's Korean, and it just for me it was just I just feel really blessed, the family, and not that they had all the answers, and a lot of times they didn't, but I just some of those last minute split second when I'm like, I'm done, I am just done. I just thought of them, and I said, today's really stinked, Morgan, but I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah, and sometimes the best thing I can do is just lay my head down on the pillow and know that I'm sober and I'm safe, and sometimes that is a good day. Like, even though it felt like a horrible day, but It's I agree with you. I think that suicide is really hard for people to talk about, and even like the concept of suicidal ideation. I know for me, over the last 5.5 years of recovery, like one thing that has made a lot, I'm in a recovery community, and I go to meetings, and I share openly. And one thing that truly helped me in the beginning was raising my hand and talking about how I was feeling. And sure,
Yeah.
like 60% of the room were probably like, wow, this person, there was a lot of judgment there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it scares people. It scares people whenever we talk openly and honestly. And it's like, how could you even like think that way? But unless you think that way and unless you've walked that path, I don't think that you have any idea what that feels like. And the biggest lifesaver for me over the years has been having that full transparency and being able to say, hey, I'm not okay right now. And remembering that it's okay to not be okay, but just don't live with it in your head. Because I give my thoughts tons of power whenever I don't share them. And that's been huge for me. And it doesn't really matter who is receiving the end of that message of how I'm feeling in that moment. It's the fact that I got it out and I was willing to share it, and it just relieves me of that burden and allows me to kind of take that moment for pause and allow the answers to come, just like that quote you shared.
Yeah.
Because they do come if you pause.
Yeah, they do. I mentioned a lot of times about environment, and environment is not just a place. A lot of times, it's how we see things. How we take the time to reflect. Being transparent, sharing, can be has been for me very conducive too. It has been, understanding that. There's a Pratt study that makes it says that people who seem on the outside like they have it all together are less approachable, and I think it's very, our imperfections actually help us draw even closer. It's not knowing all the right answers at the right time. I say to my wife sometimes we're going through or talking about things out, and it's just like everything doesn't have to be solved today. It's the journey. It's this one word I learned quite recently. It's called vacilando in Spanish, but there's different interpretations. But the way I like to say is throw the map out and it's just embrace the journey. Embrace the process of healing. A lot of times we rush through it and it looks different. I may not understand what you're going through, Morgan, and that's okay. I can still support you. It's funny because a lot of times, especially in my beginning, I wanted people to understand so badly. And a lot of times that took a lot of energy, and let's just be honest, it got very discouraging because at the end of the day, even the closest people in my life didn't understand, but they could still support me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And like I said, recovery, even with its hope aspect, is usually not talked about because of how messy recovery can be. Suicide, like, equally is hard to talk about because all the pain that it kind of jogs out, especially those who have lost someone close to them. All these. So I know at the same time, with all this and culturally and everything that makes me Robert and makes you Morgan, we have some stigma that builds up. And sometimes it comes from the external, and sometimes it's just embedded within ourselves. I just remember that we kind of tell her, at least from my experience. The best example is just someone with one of my friends has a sibling that has autism, nonverbal. It's like, but when I went to see them with my friend, she was like, this over-explaining. You know what I'm talking about, Morgan. Over-explaining. And they're like, this. I'm like, I'm just spending an hour or a little bit more with this person, and she lives with it all her life. Yeah. It kind of shows how people, how stigma can work in some lives, and they even notice that it's happening. It's instilled in this person that they have to over-explain because a little amount of inconvenience for the person, So for me, the journey of stigma and recovery, it has changed in my mind as I change. But at the same time, I know it's very present. So how has stigma impacted your journey of recovery, Morgan?
Well, I think one part is that, like, in the beginning, I didn't realize that the stigma was truly coming from my own judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, other people have their own opinions and views, and it's kind of, for a long time, I think addiction and mental health have been like this taboo thing that we don't talk about. But I think I placed a lot of stigma on myself. And so when interacting with other people who weren't on a recovery journey, I started thinking like that I was less than. And therefore my actions showed that, and which kind of created this like chain reaction of me going in this circle of self-pity. And as I've become to understand what the journey to recovery truly looks like, and in my own experience, is that the less that I can judge myself, the easier it is for me to see past what other people think. You know, I think it comes down to like a people pleasing thing and wanting to be accepted and that need to be enough. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that I am enough and that my story is valuable and it holds weight in certain moments, and in other moments it may not be as valuable to the other people that are listening to it, I really just come back to this place of understanding that I place a lot of stigma on myself. And I can see how that shows up in conversations. You know, I truly, completely submerged myself into a recovery community. Everyone in my life I moved here from California to Jacksonville, and I literally, none of my friends were, I guess, in quotations, air quotations, normal, which I'm not really sure what that is today. But in my mind, like, everyone was in recovery. And so as I started branching out and getting jobs and working with people that didn't understand anything with addiction or mental health, that's whenever I started placing a lot of internal stigma on myself and creating that separation. You know, and I think it comes back down to education. So if someone doesn't understand it, they're usually afraid of it, which ties directly into what we're talking about today, is that uncertainty. You know, most people, whether they're on a path of recovery or not, they don't handle uncertainty well. And I think that that's one cool thing that people like us in recovery, we've had to like fight that battle, and we've had to, create the hope and cultivate that courage within ourselves and through relying on others. And I know that was a very long-winded explanation.
No.
How stigma has impacted me, but I think over the last couple of years, I've truly realized that I'm the one that has placed a lot of the stigma on myself. And when others have stigma against, recovery and addiction and all of that, it's my job to educate.
Yeah. I feel like also, I was trying to look for it. I have a list of quotes. I'm not that intelligent in that way, but there was this one quote that said, the way we, don't expect to solve the problems that, with the same thinking you had when you created it. So like, it's kind of like, I don't like the idea of this, doing things the same way. No, it's even more subtle because we won't even notice it. It's just the way we think, our thought structure. So it's like, I may not be thinking exactly a self-sabotaging way of thinking about my own recovery, but in a subtle way I am. I'm positioning myself to that realization because of this enoughness, like you were talking. I was reading a book about how much pressure, enoughness, how, the standard has changed and the urgency has changed vastly. But one thing that kind of helps combat that, and I think everyone's different. I surround myself with positive people, because there's a difference between the house and the home. Everyone needs a house to live in, but a supportive family is what builds a home. And a family, family is defined that it's not just people who are blood related. A lot of times we find a lot more comfort with those who've gone through something similar. But at the same time, no one could truly understand, even the ones in your recovery, those who maybe have the similar diagnosis or whatever, through what you're going through. Because there's so much different variables and context of your own background and culture but at the same time, I think a healthy community, like you're talking about, that inspires, to kind of not only accountability, but also this this safe place to be wrong. I used to say this to some of I still do Bible studies with some young one is actually going to college in FSU starting this semester. I'm proud of him, but I just remember just saying to them, first time seeing them, I'm like, why do you go to church? And it's like people are horrified, especially people in the church, because like, oh, we need to keep them, but that's already you already lost them because you have the wrong way of processing that thought. For me, defining things really helped me in my recovery, and that helped me not. It's difficult with stigma because I think it seeds deep of how we view ourselves, like you mentioned, Morgan, right? But when we have a house, when we have a home and not a house, it does provide that process of growth towards something. It's not that we have everything figured out today, but asking the question why we do what we do. And we talked about this in the beginning, but what is your why in life? Proselytizing, we do not proselytize because I know people have been hurt for various reasons. And a lot of times they get hurt because of a lot of fear that's out there. And like you said, not enough education or not enough time. So on this topic, just to expand and just to ask you again to kind of wrap things up, because all this is great, recognizing, paying tribute to Recovery Month and Suicide Prevention Week. But how is it in our own lives? Why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why do you do what you do, Morgan? And I'll share my part after that, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, kind of going back to what you were saying about Albert Einstein and that change is inevitable, yeah. Change is promised, none of this is permanent. And so my why is currently shifting and changing. It's constantly changing. But for me, especially as an interventionist and as someone who connects families to healing, connect people to healing, for me, my why is that if I can just make one simple change in someone's life, if I can just plant one seed of hope, that helps me, and so I feel like it's a cycle that I've made it through, difficult times. And I look at it as my, not duty, but it's my calling to truly be able to help others walk through and bridge that gap, from the place of stigma, from the place of hiding, from, the place of fear over to the other bank of hope and recovery and healing. And that brings me joy. And so quite honestly, I am a little selfish. I enjoy inspiring change in others because it makes me feel good. And I enjoy feeling good.
There was one person who, I don't know, it was a seminar, and they were talking about what our passions are. Why we, I just remember he said there was a cook, and he asked the question, why do you like cooking? And he mentioned everything, like I like making the food, all that stuff. But when he asked the question why enough times, it was because his passion is to bring people together, and food was his vehicle.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So for me, it's not so much like this platform, the podcast. I love doing it because I'm able to connect with people at a very safe place that we could talk about things that normally we don't have time or we don't make time to talk about. And at the same time, when it comes to my why, it's simply it goes back to my story about my friend with nonverbal autistic sibling, but also even furthermore, I go to the derivative of love a lot of things. Why do I care about these things? Because of the people I care, bigger people in my life. The pain I see around me. It's not that I know that it's why do we care about mental health? Why do we care about suicide? Because the families and friends affected by it. For me, I go to the most simplest it is messy. Yes, it is. It is extremely messy, but at the same time, why is it worth it? Because our value doesn't stem by the circumstance we're in right now. We are not. A lot of times we're gonna get locked in by some toxic. I would say some toxic comfortability by a diagnosis, but my recovery, when I went further than that, I'm more than just that. I am Robert. I'm trying to, and I loved what you said when you said, I like helping people. It makes me feel good. I would even further say my helping people became part of my healing. My serving others became my recovery. And for me, I form more value from that because those people who are not here today, those people who they didn't make it. I feel for me, I'm emphasizing what I wish I could have said. But at the same time, I know that I play a part, but everyone else does play a part. Why do we care? Why do I care about this stuff? Because I keep it simple, because every single person affected by it. And when it comes to substance use, it comes to mental health, it comes to suicide, it affects a lot of us. So my passion, my why kind of ties into my healing together with my recovery. So it's kind of, that is my why. Like you said, Morgan, it keeps changing as we grow. So as time changes. So any final thoughts you would like to share with those listening today? I know there's a lot that we covered, but anything you want to share more?
Sure. I just want to speak to anyone that might be feeling really heavy in an emotional space right now, and anyone who's struggling with depression and thoughts of not being able to go on. I just want that person or those people to know that you are special, and you are loved, and that there is always another way. There is always another way, and there are always people who are willing to help, and I'm one of those people, and I welcome anyone anywhere that needs someone to talk to, or just really wants someone to answer the phone, to reach out, and you can put up my number anytime, anywhere, and it's 904-362-0497, and I am always available, and there's always another way, and there is a path back to home, a path back to happiness, and a path back to you. So
thank you, Morgan. I will share anything else in the notes for those who are listening. I was gonna add a little bit right here as we wrap up. I said this before, but obviously people say it better than me. I just like saying that because I'm like that. Rachel Naomi Remen says, the willingness to consider possibility requires a tolerance of uncertainty. The good news is only as good as the bad news was. If I lost $1 and I found it's nice, but it's not great. It's not amazing. But when you have someone who's struggling, or even my recovery, and then wanting to even go deeper or further in my recovery, those good and bad moments become positive ones when we look back at it. Like you said, like those days when I'm on the bed before and I said, today was bad, let me try again tomorrow. I'm still here because of that. So I just encourage those who are listening to find the help, find the resources, and ask for help, because it's okay to not be okay. Thank you, Morgan, for sharing your insight and being with us on this journey of, paying tribute to finding hope, for recovery and suicide prevention week, but also holding on to hope. I want to share with those who are watching also that you could go to find all the updates with Revive Ministries at reviveministriesfl.com. It's our website. I'll leave you with this last quote, and it says this. It says from Wayne W. Dyer. He says, "Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change." A little different now. I usually put the promo, and I am, but this time we're gonna go a little bit further. It's September right now when this is uploaded. We're looking towards November to January, and I hope you enjoy the new topics or returning topics that are coming up in Revive Ministries. And this is goodbye for now.